Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a new episode of Chatting with Lady C. Hello, Mom, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, honey. And how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
You're looking nice and rested.
Yeah, I mean, it's a better weekend this weekend than last weekend.
It was, wasn't it? Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, it's nice.
Yes, this was nice and relaxing.
I just want to tell everyone, basically at the moment, because we've been getting a lot of things about subtitles. So we do not do the subtitles. That is not up to us. It's up to YouTube. And believe it or not, there is a gentleman like us, or like you guys, that is actually behind a computer listening to what we're saying and has to write it by hand. So by looking it up, the subtitles can take a little bit of time. It can take up to 4 to 5 times the length of the video of him doing one job. So let's say our videos are roughly an hour. It can take him up to 4 to 5 hours to work on that one video. So it can take time. It might not be up immediately, but it does come up later on.
Oh, thank you, honey. Thanks for that.
Because you have to give the guy a break.
He needs to be able to transcribe it.
Well, imagine
yes.
I don't believe there's a lot of people that would do that job. So there must be like quite a few of them
Yes.
doing a lot of videos. Because imagine everybody that does a video on YouTube that and wants captions or subtitles. They have to write that all manually.
Gosh.
I know. And I remember actually doing my show. There was actually a guy with like a little keyboard listening to what we're saying and was trying to write down everything that he could catch. Of course, he didn't get down everything, but I think it was just saving them time from doing it after. And he was there just...
Yes, yes. It's like transcribers of court records.
Exactly, but I think they've got like little keys, so
yes.
It's easy. I don't know if they do the same.
No idea, but at least you've explained
yeah,
it.
just because sometimes it comes out immediately, and sometimes it does take up a couple of days.
Well, that's very interesting, honey. Thanks for that.
Yeah, just so everybody knows.
Good. Now, some questions for me.
So our first question today is from Coolers 2.
That's obviously a nom de plume.
Sounds or a young lad. I don't know actually. Who knows? So Lady C, now that the news has come out that Meghan did pass on information through a third party, or so she says so, to the authors of Finding Freebies, has she committed perjury, and do you think she will be held in contempt of court?
Well, yes, that is a really good question, isn't it? The reality is, in civil cases nowadays, most judges have a very high threshold for what would be regarded as perjury, because practically everybody lies, and the court has to have sufficient degree of tolerance that the jails aren't full of every liar who's prosecuting or defending a lawsuit in the civil courts. Having said that, Meghan would have given a witness statement with a statement of truth, and she has now gone back on that witness statement. She has had to correct the witness statement, which means that her old statement of truth is not worth the paper it's written upon. And all of this calls into question her credibility. And I would find it very unlikely that if this case proceeds to court and Meghan is caught in the most monumental whoppers, that the judge is going to recommend a police action for the file to be handed over to the police for the Director of Public Prosecutions to charge Meghan with perjury. I think it would be very unlikely for it to happen, not only because it's Meghan, but pretty much anybody. courts take a much more lenient view of things nowadays. Uh, so unless she comes out with some real absolute whoppers that would end up possibly trying to get somebody put into prison, in which case the court would take a far less lenient view. I think she's going to get away with it to the extent that she's not going to be fined, she's not going to be charged with perjury, but it all goes to her credibility. And ultimately, lawsuits are won or lost off the evidence and credibility. And Meghan's credibility is already at a fairly low ebb, and this will have brought it to an even lower ebb. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think she should get hit very hard with this. She's basically lied. If she's changing her statement, she's lied.
Well, of course she's lied. She's lied and she's been caught in the lie.
And she's trying to rectify it.
And her lawyers have said to her, what you said is unsustainable. And, the judge is not a fool and people are not stupid. And so you're going to have to backtrack. And she's backtracked. Of course she's lied, but she's a brazen liar. There are no two ways about it.
And a judge usually catches that out very quickly. Because usually some people forget their lie or they've made a little difference and they don't stick to the same story. And that's that's their job, to figure out who's saying the truth and who's lying.
Well, a good judge does that. But
exactly.
I have seen cases where the most flagrant liars have been believed either because the judges sympathized with them or because they were members of, say, the judiciary, and judges don't like to find against members of the judiciary or that sort of thing. So it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work because not all judges think of only the truth. But it is hoped that Mr. Justice Warby will think of the truth. Because, at issue here is the fact that Meghan and Harry are trying to muzzle the press. So, we need a free press in a democracy, although we also need a responsible press. And certainly some of the reportage surrounding COVID has proven that the press generally is rather more interested in sensationalism than factuality as opposed to actuality. So, next question, honey.
So for our next question is from Sue Somerset Larson. Hi, Lady C and Misha. Can I ask a question? Did you know Helene Cordet? And do you know anything about her relationship with Prince Philip? And did you ever go to the saddle room?
Well, I'm afraid the saddle room was a little bit before my time, and I never went to it. I did know Helene Cordet slightly. I interviewed her for my book, The Royal Marriages, if I remember correctly. It was the book I interviewed her for. And she was wonderfully helpful. She was an interesting woman. She was Greek. She was born Hélène Foufounis. Her father was a Greek millionaire who went into exile with Prince Philip's father and the rest of the royal family, the Greek royal family. If I remember correctly, they had a place in Lyon and a place in Paris. They lived in France. And she was about 3 or 4 years older than Prince Philip, if my memory serves me correctly. But they were great, great friends from childhood. her father helped the family out financially, because although Prince Philip and his parents got refuge in a cottage that belonged to Prince Andrew's sister-in-law, Princess George of Greece, who was tremendously rich. She was Princess Mary Bonaparte. People like Monsieur Foufounis also helped them out financially because they had absolutely no money at all. They were great, great friends. When she was married first, I think she married somebody called Kirby, if my recollection is correct, in about 1938. And the marriage didn't last. And then she met and fell in love with someone else with whom she had 2 children. I should really have refreshed my memory before answering all of this, but so much has been going on today that I've just not had the time to do any refreshing. So if I'm slightly wrong, I'm slightly wrong. I'll just try to wing it off what I remember. Anyway, she met this guy, they fell in love. It took a while for her to get her divorce. She had an illegitimate child, and which was a huge scandal in the early 40s for a well-born girl. And then she produced another son, and Prince Philip was godfather to both boys. And they remained great friends. Then Prince Philip married the present queen, and the newspapers somehow got a hold of the fact that Philip and Helene Cordet, she was known as Helene Cordet, she presented Café Continental, which was the most popular television show of the late 40s. She was a bit of a singer, she was a bit of an actress, she was very glamorous, and she was a huge star in England. And the newspapers got a hold of the fact that she had this friendship with Prince Philip, and they tried to make out that the children were actually Prince Philip's children, which they definitely were not. And she and Prince Philip remained friendly, but she said to me, she said that, with the passage of time and the newspapers going on and on and on and on about the children being Philip's, she beat a tactical retreat to Switzerland. Especially, she had a club called, if I remember correctly, I think it was the Saddle Room in the Milroy, which was by where Les Ambassadeurs still is, just by the Hilton in Park Lane.
Okay.
And
yes, I see now. Yes.
It was very, very popular. I don't recall ever having gone there, but she really created the first snack bar for hamburgers and such in England. And she made a great deal of money, but then she lost a great deal of money. And she ended up in Switzerland, and they remained on cordial terms. But with the passage of time, the bonds of friendship were loosened somewhat, but not utterly, because they remained on cordial terms. But she herself told me that she became very mindful of the fact that she had to watch her step very carefully, because the press were so eager to try to misinterpret her friendship with Prince Philip. And she said, he was my little brother. He was like her brother. But they tried to make out that they were lovers, and they were never lovers. So I hope that answers the question. Is that interesting?
Yeah, it was.
It was. Yeah. One of the many women that Prince Philip is supposed to have had an affair with, that he did not have an affair with, And I believe her because she was married and Philip was her best man and he was 18 at the time, or 17. I think he was 18, but he might have been 17. I mean, why would she have been having an affair with a 17-year-old who was younger than she was and was like her brother? You know, the whole thing just doesn't make sense. But next question, honey.
Right. So for our next question today is from Anne O'Brien. Can you please tell me what happened to the Bowes-Lyon girls locked up in the asylum?
Yes. Their names were Nerissa and Katherine Bowes-Lyon. They were the first cousins of the Queen. Their father was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's brother, one of her elder brothers. His wife was the daughter of Lord Clifton. She was a Trefusis. And ironically enough, it is what they then called the bad blood in the Trefusis family that prevented Johnny Spencer, Diana's father, from proceeding to marry Anne Cook, the present Lady Glenconner, when he heard that there was bad blood in the Trefusis family, because there was a connection between the Cooks and the Trefusis family. So the consequences spread far and wide. They thought that they were possibly insane, if not insane, imbecilic. Certainly, Nerissa's medical notes have her down as an imbecile. The two girls, it turns out, and three of their first cousins, their mother's siblings' children, were all in the same institution together, committed. They suffered from something called Huntington's chorea, which is a neurological disease that at first the children appear to be perfectly normal, and they are perfectly normal developmentally. Then, with the passage of time, the consequences start to kick in. The manifestations are very varied. One of our greatest friends has Huntington's chorea. It's a terrible, terrible disease because it's incurable. And it attacks people in different ways, and it attacks them at different times. Some people, it doesn't kick in till middle age. Other people, it kicks in teenage, early 20s. They lose their ability to function because it affects their motor skills, it affects their speech. The tragedy is it doesn't affect their brain. So literally their bodies collapse around them. And this is what happened to Nerissa and Katherine Bowes-Lyon. Their sister Anne married Lord Anson, who was the heir to the Earl of Lichfield in, I think it was 1938. The two sisters were in society and lived perfectly normal lives until the conditions started to kick in, and they were both committed to an institution in 1941. I wrote about this in my book, The Untold Life of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And I have quite an extensive amount about it, starting on page 358 and going straight through to page 360 something. And they were committed in 1941. It was at first a private institution, then it was taken over by the state, then it was judged to be not up to scratch, so they were moved to another institution, and Dima's godmother, Anna's mother, is the one who used to take care of them.
So having a disease, they went to a madhouse.
Well,
that's what I don't get.
It wasn't really a madhouse. It was an asylum. An asylum is not only for mad people; it's for the infirm, and it's
in the 1930s. It sounded like it was only for mad people.
Well, they were actually categorized as imbeciles.
Yeah.
But they were not imbeciles. Every time they saw their cousins or their aunt, Queen Elizabeth or Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, or Princess Margaret on the television, they go, they knew. The only person, according to Etienne Dunit, Anna's mother, who was the doctor responsible for them towards the end of their lives, and they were taken very good care of. They knew who they were, but they couldn't communicate. They couldn't speak. And only their mother ever would go and see them. I have read somewhere that their sister Anne, who ultimately became Princess George of Denmark, that she used to go and see them, but Etienne said she didn't. She said the only person who used to go and see them was their mother. And when their mother ceased visiting them, nobody came to see them. And the belief was that having external visitors would upset their equilibrium. So visits from the family were discouraged. But I don't think the family was that keen to visit either, because it was very unpleasant. They were in very disagreeable circumstances, and, but their mother used to go and see them. I don't think many people come out of this with great credit. I can see where the cousins and the aunts and the uncles would not have gone to visit, because they didn't have that close a relationship with them. I can see where the mother visited. I know that at the time Princess George used to live in England, because I used to see her in England at parties. And I also know that her daughter, Lady Elizabeth Anson, Lady Elizabeth Shackley, who died recently, she never once went and visited them either. Nor did her brother Patrick Litchfield, the famous photographer. I think it's very sad, but that's unfortunately how people used to be treated in those days. We live in a more compassionate world now, where if people are ill or infirm or mentally ill or crippled or whatever, there's more inclusivity now, which is a much nicer thing.
Oh yeah, they're all the loonies are on the streets now. I have to say, they're having the time of their life.
I'm not speaking about those loonies. I'm speaking about the ones who are behind walls.
Well, they really, if they're really behind walls, they probably really need to be there.
Yes, yes.
So,
Okay, so did you find that interesting?
I did.
Very tragic. If anybody wants to know in greater depths what happened, I would refer them to my book, The Untold Life of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, because there are several pages on it. I go into the whole thing, not only about their physical condition and their emotional condition, but the attitude of the Bowes-Lyon family, the attitude of the Clifton family, the attitude of the royal family. And one of the things is how when this was... I also go in, I should have said that. I also go into how it was exposed, because it was exposed by somebody I used to know called James Dorset, who was quite a social figure in royal circles and aristocratic circles in the 70s and 80s. He died in, I think, 87. By which time I wasn't speaking to him. But for a few years, we were very friendly. And in fact, I won't mention their names, but great household names, one of whom is a member of the extended royal family, another of whom is a godmother of yours, who actually went and identified his body. And only after James died did we all discover that he was responsible for selling stories like this. I dumped him when he sold a story about me to Nigel Dempster. And I wouldn't speak to him thereafter. But anyway, all of that is in the book as well. How the whole exposure and how completely mortified Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was. Because, of course, she was the president or the chairman or whatever it was, or the patron, must have been the patron, of MENCAP, the Organisation for the Mentally Ill.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was very, very embarrassing for her, because what made it even worse was that the family had reported the two girls as dead. And I asked Brooks Baker, who was the editor of Burke's Peerage, about it. And he told me, he said, well, we relied upon people to actually give us accurate information as a matter of honor. And they simply lied and said both the girls were dead. And I don't know how James found out that they were alive. But James was a really nasty piece of work. I mean, he's the one who also exposed the fact that Princess Michael of Kent's father was a Nazi. And, so he was a really nasty piece of work. But so anyway, it's all in the book for those who want to have a rather more in-depth account.
All right.
Next question,
Sure.
honey.
So for our next question today is from Georgina Grosvenor. Please can Lady C dedicate an episode to the Queen Mother or include her in another one? Questions I want to ask. Is it true she was extremely jealous of Marina, Duchess of Kent? Was it Princess Diana's mother who said she was a witch? Was it the real story of her character?
Oh, okay. Well, actually, one could dedicate more than a whole program to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, because she was really a fascinating character. She was much more multifaceted, intelligent, dynamic, vibrant, everything than she's ever been given credit for. What was the first question? Is it true that she was jealous of Princess Marina, Duchess of Kent? Yes, it's true. She was. The Duke of Windsor used to say that she was a pathologically jealous woman. And even putting aside the possibility that his view of her became jaundiced by the falling out that they had, there is little doubt that she was an extremely jealous person. She was, and she was particularly jealous of Princess Marina, because until Princess Marina came along and married Prince George, the Duchess of York, as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother then was the only daughter-in-law, and she was used to being the centre of attention where the press were concerned. And she had these two adorable little girls, Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret Rose. And, you know, they were the hugest stars of their day. I mean, the two princesses and Shirley Temple, who was the biggest movie star of the day, was a little girl. And they were all just, I mean, cannon fodder for public attention and for the newspapers. Along comes the beautiful, glamorous, chic Princess Marina of Greece, who marries Prince George, who becomes the Duke of Kent. She went ballistic. She absolutely could not abide Princess Marina. But Princess Marina could not abide her either. Princess Marina used to call her that common little Scots girl. Anyway, no, she did not like Princess Marina. She was jealous of her, and Princess Marina did not like her, but she certainly wasn't jealous of her. Then the next part of the question was it Diana's mother who said that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was a witch? Well, she would have been one of many. She was revered publicly as the soft, sweet granny. People forget that Hitler called her the most dangerous woman in Europe because she was a formidable personality. She wasn't this soft, sweet little granny who, that she, you know, that was her public image. She was a really tough, hard-hearted, hard-headed operator. She played for very high stakes, but she played the game within the rules. She was an absolute devotee of the monarchy. She never ever tried to supersede the crown, so she didn't do what Diana and Meghan have both done, which is, we're such big stars, let's move on from being members of the royal family to becoming royalty of the world in our own right, because Diana had started to do that, and this was Diana's ambition. Of course, death intervened with her, sadly, and Meghan has tried to do it, and I think we can safely say up to now it looks as if she's failed. Of course, with President Biden and then President Harris in power, and Diana's and Meghan's impeccable links to the Democratic Party, we might actually see a resurgence of Meghan, and that she might be able to reclaim some lost ground. I don't think the party's entirely necessarily over for her yet, and I think people ought to bear that in mind. But Elizabeth was absolutely loyal to the institution and functioned within it. But many people thought she was a witch. Not only Diana's mother, many people. Diana herself wasn't too keen on Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. In the Squidgygate tapes, she touches upon it very slightly, but privately she really did not like the Queen Mother. And once the divorce took place, the Queen Mother absolutely loathed Diana, as did Princess Margaret, and in fact, as did practically everyone else in the establishment. But Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was in a position to do something about it and did. And she was a formidable opponent, formidable, as the Duke of Windsor used to attest to. Is that it for today, honey?
No, you just got the real story of the character.
What is the real story of her character? Well, her character is so complex that I don't know that I want to give a short answer. But if you twist my arm, I'll wrap it up quite smartly by saying she was a brilliant operator. She was arguably the most confident woman you could ever have hoped to meet. She was brilliant at appearing to be soft and sweet while being anything else than. I mean, she used to say, I'm nowhere near as nice as I look, because she had fabled charm. She was very charming and very funny. But the very first time I met Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother, with the Queen, was at Ascot races in, must have been July 1973. I was there with Marianne in his car, and we stopped to speak to the Duke of Atholl, and the Queen and the Queen Mother bounded up, and we were all speaking. And I noticed the interchange between the Queen Mother, and everybody else. The Queen Mother took over, and she was the star of the show. You would have thought that she was the Queen Regnant, and that Queen Elizabeth II was her daughter, full stop. And what I found interesting in the dynamic between mother and daughter was how the Queen allowed her mother to shine, and she was quite happy to stay on the periphery. Her mother was used to being the center of attention, calling the shots, being the star, you name it. And I noticed that the very first time I saw them together. And I'll tell you, it was a very, very interesting observation to make, because it went right to the heart of both women's characters and to the quality of the relationship between mother and daughter. But the Queen, despite deferring to her mother as a dutiful daughter and a loving daughter would, and despite being somebody who didn't need the limelight while her mother had to be in the limelight, whenever the Queen wanted something and her mother didn't want it, the Queen won. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, because the Queen wanted Prince Philip of Greece, and she got him. The Queen Mother wanted the Duke of Rutland, Charles, who married my stepsister-in-law, Frances Sweeney, or Lord Porchester, who King George VI did not want and put his foot down. But she also wanted Hugh Grafton, who was then Hugh Euston. He became the Duke of Grafton. Again, the Queen had no interest whatsoever in him as a potential spouse. So when the chips were down, dear little Lilibet soft, sweet, kind, and loving and deferential as she was to Mummy, would batten down the hatches. Which shows that she's quite the formidable personality in her own right, you know. But I tell you, she learnt from a past mistress, just as how I did, to have a mother that is so brutally strong and so brutally overpowering and so brutally dominating, despite all the charm. You really, to survive, you have to develop great tactical skills and patience, but also persistence to know, no, you're not going to prevail. And that partly is why the Queen is such a strong personality, because she survived her mother, who was an overpoweringly strong personality. Charming when she wanted to be, and great fun. And everything was party, let's have a good time. But underneath it all, whoa, my God, Hitler knew what he was saying when he said she was the most dangerous woman in Europe, because she really was. Was that interesting?
Yes, it was.
Okay, well, thank you, honey. Thank you. So, please keep the questions coming in. And the next one will be on the crown.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much, and goodbye.